All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to unpack a really powerful mental model from one of the most successful investors ever, a guy named Ray Dalio. He actually calls this his holy grail for making great decisions, and it all comes down to the art of thoughtful disagreement. And it really all starts with this one idea. It sounds so simple, right? But actually living by this, truly letting go of your need to be right so you can find out what's true, that is a total game changer. So how did Dalio get here? Well, it wasn't easy. It was a journey that started with him thinking he knew everything and ended with him realizing he knew almost nothing. You see, Ray Dalio will be the first to tell you that his success didn't come from what he knew. It came from him figuring out how to deal with what he didn't know. And this is the story of how he learned that incredibly important and painful lesson. This quote right here, this is at the very core of his philosophy. Dalio calls himself a hyper-realist. And all that means is he believes the only way to get good results in life is to first see reality for exactly what it is, not what you wish it was. Only then can you make good choices. So in his early days, Dalio was just brilliant, super ambitious, and honestly, incredibly confident. He had this little formula: dream big, face the facts, and just be determined as hell. And, for a while, it totally worked. He was convinced he could see the truth way clearer than anybody else, but that confidence, it was about to get a major reality check. And that brings us to 1982. This was a really pivotal moment for him. Dalio was sure he saw something coming in the economy that nobody else did, or so he thought. And he was about to make the single biggest bet of his entire career, completely convinced that he was right. He was just absolutely certain that the U.S. economy was heading for a complete and total disaster. And he didn't just quietly believe this. Oh no. He staked his entire company, his reputation, and all of his clients' money on it. And he did it very, very publicly. So what happened? Well, that disaster he predicted, it never came. In fact, the exact opposite happened. The U.S. economy didn't crash. It took off like a rocket, starting one of the biggest 18-year bull markets in history. Dalio's big prediction wasn't just a little bit off, it was spectacularly, painfully, humiliatingly wrong. The fallout was just catastrophic. He lost so much money that he had to fire every single person he worked with. People he said were like his family. His company, Bridgewater, which is a huge deal today, was suddenly just him, alone, in an office. And to really understand just how low he had fallen, get this. He was so broke that he had to borrow $4,000 from his dad just to pay his family's bills. This wasn't just some professional setback. This was a deeply personal, hit rock bottom kind of moment. But this is where the story really gets interesting. That crushing, devastating pain, it forced him to think more deeply than he ever had in his life. He realized his whole approach to thinking was broken. And out of the ashes of that failure, he built a brand new system for moving forward. He came up with this simple but honestly incredibly profound equation. He realized that pain isn't just something you should try to avoid. It's a signal. It's your brain telling you that you've just run into a weakness or a piece of reality you don't get yet. And if you can just stop and reflect on that pain, that's what becomes the fuel for real progress. And that reflection led him to create this really elegant 5-step loop for getting pretty much anything you want. Okay, so step 1, have super clear goals. Step 2, identify the problems that are blocking you and don't put up with them. 3, diagnose those problems to find the real root cause. 4, design a plan to get around them. And finally, step 5, push through and actually do the work. Then you just keep repeating that loop and you get better and better. Okay, so now Dalio has this incredible map for success. But if it's so simple and logical, that kind of raises a big question, doesn't it? Why don't we all just do this all the time? Why is it so hard to follow those 5 simple steps? Well, Dalio realized it's because there are 2 giant psychological barriers. He thinks of them as 2 dragons that get in almost everybody's way. The first dragon is the ego barrier. You know what this is. It's that deep part of us that needs to be right and that sees any kind of criticism as a personal attack. The second one is the blind spot barrier. And this is just the simple fact that our brains are all wired differently. We all have huge gaps in how we see the world, and we usually don't even know they're there. So, how do you get past those 2 powerful dragons? Well, this brings us to the ultimate discovery of Dalio's entire journey, the solution that he calls his Holy Grail. This was the fundamental shift. He literally had to rewire his own brain so that he got his thrill, his joy, not from proving that he was right, but from discovering what was actually true, even if, and this is the important part, especially if it proved him wrong. Before he had this big aha moment, he said his own perspective was really limited. He was basically trapped looking at this big, complex world through one tiny little keyhole. He said it was like living in a black and white movie. Yeah, he was getting information, but he was missing all the nuance, all the texture, all the color of reality. But then when he started to genuinely try to see the world through the eyes of other smart people, especially people who disagreed with him, everything changed. Bam! It was like the world exploded into full color. He could suddenly see all these dimensions of reality he never even knew existed before. And this is what he calls radical open-mindedness. Now, this isn't just about, being polite and listening to other people. It's an active, genuine practice of hunting down the smartest, most thoughtful people you can find who see things differently, and then sincerely trying to understand their point of view to find the holes in your own. So, let's boil this all down. What should you take away from this? First, you have to embrace reality for what it is, not what you wish it was. Second, remember that simple formula. Pain plus reflection equals progress. Third, always be on the lookout for your own ego and your own blind spots. And finally, and this is the most actionable piece of advice, go find smart people who disagree with you. That is where the real learning happens. And that leaves us with one final question to really think about. This isn't about winning an argument or proving you're right. It's about expanding your own vision from black and white to full, vibrant color. So, who's that person for you?